Welcome to Talk with Tara, the podcast where we dive into the bold, the funny, and the fascinating. I'm Tara, your host, bringing you unfiltered conversations on life, love, and everything in between. Hit that follow button so you're always in the loop. And now let's get started. I am so thrilled to have Maegan Stephens with me, and I should say Dr. Maegan Stephens. She's a renowned public speaking coach, author, and communication expert dedicated to helping executives and thought leaders elevate their presence and impact. Maegan holds a PhD in communications. For 7 years, Dr. Stephens served as Duarte, one of the world's leading communications firms, where she honed her expertise in strategic messaging and executive presentation coaching. She's also the author of Adaptive Listening, a groundbreaking book that explores how leaders can listen more effectively to transform their communication and influence. Dr. Stephens empowers her clients to speak with clarity, confidence, and authenticity, whether on stage, in the boardroom, or during high-stakes moments that define careers. I'm so excited to have Maegan. She's someone that I respect highly. Thank you so much for taking the time and being here today, Maegan.
I am so excited. Let's get your listeners some tips to be better communicators today.
That's great. And is it okay if I call you Maegan, or do you prefer I call you Dr. Stephens?
Oh, I only make my husband call me Dr. Stephens. You can absolutely call me Maegan.
I love that. Okay. Well, let's start off with your journey and how you became a coach to some of the world top CEOs, TED Talk experts. And a little bit about people that you actually work with.
Complete accident. In 11th grade, the theater class was full, and my high school academic advisor said, go take the speech class. It's kind of the same thing. And that was it. I just fell in love with speech, with the idea that you could manipulate what you were saying and how you were saying it, and not in an unethical way, but just in a way to try to get people to believe or feel or think what you wanted them to. And that's what really set me on a path to go to college, get a PhD in communication. And I really thought I was going to be a professor for a really long time. And then I realized academia is slow and I don't like it. But man, corporate is fast. And that is what led me to take the communication skills I had learned in theory in the classroom with students and move that over to working with executives. Because it turns out a lot of executives didn't pay attention to their college public speaking course, or they paid attention, but it just didn't make sense at the time. They weren't in a place in their life where they had to use the skills they learned in that class. And then all of a sudden they got moved up the ladder and up the ladder and up the ladder. And it became so important. And they're not going to go take a night class to do it. So you bring in a coach like me to get them real-time feedback and critique so that they can make the messages land with their internal and their external audiences.
Yeah, and some of them are engineers, and they ended up becoming CEOs, and they really didn't think they would be speaking in front of 20,000 people, right?
I'd say the majority of executives I work with came up as technical experts. At some point, the direct report pool got bigger, and then it got so big you're managing people who aren't in your specialized skill set. And that's hard. That's a hard growth path to have for people. If you aren't taught the communication and leadership skills you need beyond the technical skills to do the job, one day you just wake up and you have thousands of people reporting to you, and no one really taught you how to manage your communication to meet the needs of thousands or hundreds of thousands of different people at the same time.
Wow, that's a lot of pressure. So what are the biggest misconceptions that leaders have about what it takes to be an amazing speaker?
That it will make them inauthentic. If I practice, I will be fake. If I do too many rehearsals, I won't be good by the time I get in front of the audience. And that's where I always just kind of tilt my head and smile and say, you think Serena Williams practices too much? You think Steph Curry's like, I practice enough. I'm not going to practice anymore because I might not play authentically. Speaking is a skill, and it's a skill you can develop. Communicating is a skill, and you're not going to get worse at it if you practice it. So usually when I've worked with a leader that said, oh, that didn't go too well, I practiced too much, you got to this point of practice. You didn't get to this point. You didn't actually go to the part that was far enough. It's like changing a golf swing or your bowling stroke. Right. It's going to feel worse before it gets better. You didn't let it get to the part that got better. You stopped too soon.
How much should one practice?
It's so different depending on the speaker. So if you are someone who speaks a lot to a lot of different groups, your rehearsals might just be dedicated practice for that event. Okay. If you're really new into the journey, I mean, you're promoted overnight or you've identified a gap for yourself, you need to do skill development that's not just in time or real time. You need to figure out what's not working for you today. Are you a habitual verbal filler, your ums, your ahs? You have a lot of crutch words. A big crutch word we see a lot at the end of sentences, right? Yes. Because you're seeking confirmation because you don't think that your point landed. Those kind of things, if you knew what was wrong, you could start to create a really easy development plan for yourself without even the need of a coach. Listen back to your meeting recordings. How many times did you say it on Monday? Great. Listen to Tuesday's meeting recordings. How many times you say it on Tuesday? Find yourself a replacement word. Learn to sit in the pause. There's all of these little ways you could develop without saying, I have a talk to give on a main stage next week. Leaders always have another talk to give. You can always make it a specialized coaching session. But a lot of people don't have that. They're just like, I want to get better. Today, it's so easy to get a recording of yourself in a meeting, giving a talk, hold up your phone and practice to yourself and identify what do I think might not be working if I was in the audience being receptive to this message.
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that because when I play back my own, when I'm speaking to some of my guests and I do my I notice I say a lot of like as my filler, a lot of rights. And that's a really good point that people should listen back and figure out what their filler words are and figure out another word. Now, what are some recommendations on other filler words that people could use? Would it be just the pause?
Pause is probably the biggest one. Often when people have a filler, it's because their mouth is speaking faster than their brain is catching up to, and they need to add something there. Well, guess what? You could add a pause instead of the and nobody's going to notice the difference. Yeah. All you have to do is replace it. You've got to train your brain to be okay. Your audience doesn't think you're dumb if you take a breath. They think you're a human being. But we, for some reason, think if I stop speaking, they're going to catch on that I'm a fraud. No, they're not. That's not what's going to happen at all. They're going to think this is a normal person who's living in this moment with me. The pause is the best piece of advice we have for people. The other is if you notice you'd have a crutch word, and I would call your ums and your uhs or filler words, but your rights and your likes are crutch words. Executives often always have other words that they use repeatedly. Absolutely. Or like there's just, and it's usually multisyllabic. There's word, and you're like, wow, you say that word a lot. You need a replacement behavior for it. Yourself another word, and in like a quarter, that word's going to be overused, and you're going to have to get yourself another word, and then in a quarter, that one's going to be overused. You just have to pay attention to it. You're constantly evolving the language, the vocabulary to get some of those crutch words out of your way.
Okay, that's really good. I really like that. When you start coaching someone, Maegan, when do you first start to see the key things that are hindering, or how do you fix their style? Like most of these executives or these people who are public speakers, everybody just says, oh, you're great. Oh, you're great. And they don't really want to tell them the truth. And then how do you give them the feedback so it doesn't hurt their feelings?
The majority of the executives I work with didn't hire me. Someone else on their team hired me for them. So it's a chief of staff, or it's a head of comms, or it's someone on the events team that said, we got an exec, we need you to come in, because we can't say to them what we know you can say to them. One, because it's awkward. You maybe report up to that leader. They're the boss. It's really, really hard to say it. Or two, sometimes leaders just believe an external person. I often find myself giving advice that the comms team or the events team knew. And they're like, we've said that before. I know you did. But you paid me externally to come and say it because no one's listening to you anymore. So that's part of the uniqueness of my role, is that I'm usually brought in not at the exec's request. It's somebody else's request. And I take very seriously how I need to build rapport quickly with the exec. And I usually do that by cracking a joke. And I've had this one work with multiple executives. I'll say something like, wow, they've got you doing a lot of speaking. So like, when do you do your real job? And I'll get you get it. Absolutely. They got me out here doing all this stuff. I never have time to do what I really need to do. And right then we're in lockstep. I get your world is hectic and crazy, and this is just one more to do on your to-do list. And I get to come in with that position. And I think sometimes internal folks take so seriously their job and their task that they don't know how to pretend like it's not as important as the rest. It's not. That's the secret. It is just as important. But for that exec, I got to pretend like it's as unimportant as you probably think it's unimportant, so I can break down the barrier just a little bit and we can start working quickly.
Is there a most common thing that you see that speakers do that's kind of like, that's pretty common?
I'm going to give you one that was pre-Gen AI, and I'll give you my post-Gen AI.
Oh, okay.
Because it's changed.
Yeah.
Pre-Gen AI, it was not believing. I have to believe an executive. I have to believe you when you get on stage. I have to believe you when you get in front of the all teams. I have to believe you. And because they aren't the writers of the thing they're saying, and they are back to back and they're busy, I don't believe you. I believe you're saying words that somebody else wrote for you. It doesn't sound like you. I don't think you've internalized it. So you're reading the script or you're reading the prompter verbatim because it's not you. And so there's a lot of collaboration I have to do with whoever the writer was and who that executive was. And it's the three of us working together to make sure it's a thing that you believe and you want to say and you're comfortable saying, before I can get it to sound good on stage or in a camera. So that's probably number one. And I will say pre-Gen AI, oh man, I am getting canned scripts. I am getting cliche answers to questions. I worked with an executive last week that said, I took my first pass on these answers to this Q&A. The leader was going to film one of those internal videos, like meet the exec. So there was a list of questions. I went into Gen AI and I got my answers to this. And I said, oh, I know you did. I could tell you got your answers in Gen AI. They sound like it. And so what I'm seeing now is relying on super business cliche answers for things and having to coach leaders to not say that. I know you think the hard work was done because now we have an answer. Well, no, we have to rework the whole answer before I can even get into helping you practice saying it authentically and like you mean it.
Oh, that's so interesting. So Gen AI is almost making it just more inauthentic.
Yeah. And it's making everyone live here now because what's it built from? What was done before?
Right.
All right. And you're collecting what is already out there. Well, I don't want to hear what's already out there. I can already get that. That recording exists somewhere. I want to hear something that is to the moment, something that is so updated and so personal and has that leader's own spin on it. Okay. Now we're back to my number one coaching. I need to believe you. And I'm not going to believe you.
So let me ask you this question. Who are a couple speakers that you think are just amazing?
My go-to list whenever someone asks for some recommendations of speakers, Indra Nooyi, the former chairperson of PepsiCo, is always in my top list because there is a comfortability and an ease about the way she speaks. She's not worried. She's not worried. She's not concerned. And I think that's you can feel it when an exec gets on stage and you're like, oh, they're just in this moment with me. They're just in this moment with me. I think Bill McDermott does this very well too. I just believe you. I believe you believe what you're saying.
So that's good. Those are good people to watch and learn from then. Can you
Absolutely.
learn that?
Yeah, of course you can learn it.
Yeah.
I always kind of chuckle when people say, oh, you're either born with it or you're not. And I'll say, let me use myself as a use case. I have done some back of napkin math on how many hours I was coached as a speaker. Not how much coaching I've done, but how many one-on-one sessions where I was coached. It's over 500 hours of me being actively coached by another coach. That's because I started in 11th grade. I was a competitive public speaker in college. So every day after school, after class, I was having someone say, not good enough. Your face is weird. You're moving weird. Your hands are weird. That sentence doesn't land. Rewrite it. So it was drilled into me to get to this point. It's not just, voila, I know where my hands should go. This was hundreds of hours of practice to get there. Now, executives have been speaking for dozens and hundreds of hours. So I don't need any executive to go through a 500-hour coaching program. You probably need a couple of hours before every big event, though, to re-engage the muscles, to have someone point out, there's this new thing you don't know you're doing, or that our audiences have changed. Their attention spans have just plummeted. So they're not going to sit through your 30-minute keynote anymore. Ugh, can you imagine? No. And we know because we do Wi-Fi analysis on events. We know when phones come out. We know when Wi-Fi analysis spikes and people have stopped listening to you. So we know you have to be shorter, but that doesn't mean you can't give them the goods. You got to find ways to constantly re-earn their attention. That's all in the way that you show up and the way you have prepared and how you let your authentic self come through in those moments.
Yeah, authenticity is so important. So what's the difference between authenticity and vulnerability?
You can't be authentic if you're not vulnerable.
Okay. So that's interesting because I've worked with executives and they say, oh, I don't want to talk about anything personal and I just want to make it all business. And those are probably now Indra, when she speaks, I haven't watched her speak, to be honest with you. So is she authentic? Is she vulnerable, or does she just talk about the business?
Some of my favorite clips are fireside chats she's done where she talks about how she had empowered her executive assistants to give yes and no's to her kids when they'd call. Listen, if the kid calls and wants these things, it's a yes or it's a no. Don't pull that to me. Talks about kids growing up like under her desk. There are all of these moments about motherhood and womanhood and being a professional and the balance and the challenges of all those things. And yeah, that's personal. Yeah. And I get executives all the time. I don't want to make it about me. I don't want to make it about me. And I say, listen, you're coming from a good place. Your intentions here are good. Here's what you're forgetting. You are in meetings that the rest of these people will never be in. You are in rooms they would kill to be in. You know things they will never know. How selfish of you not to give them a peek behind the curtain. How selfish. And that usually helps to loosen up those really tight wound execs who don't want to talk about themselves because they don't want to be called selfish. Right. So I do like to do a little cognitive dissonance like, hey, either you can be selfish or you could change your ways. Which one do you want? Right. You could argue it's a false choice, but it's usually a choice that motivates them to try a different tactic, knowing it's all for the sake of helping the audience somehow. It's helping your teams believe in the message. It's helping your customers know you have the right products or solutions available to them. It's helping the market understand why you're a company that's worth betting on. That all comes from your vulnerability and what you're willing to share.
That's so interesting. Okay, so you're going to give an executive a negative comment. Any other tips, creative tips in giving constructive criticism?
I can tell you about myself, and then we can broaden this out to others who have to give criticism. I have cultivated a brand where I'm a straight shooter. I'm going to tell it like it is, and I am here to help you win. And I'm not going to help you win by telling you how great you are. I'm going to help you win by pointing out where you need more work, where you need more practice, where you need to do something different than you're doing today. So I often, and I'll be at a rehearsal at a main stage event, an exec will be on stage, they'll stop and be like, all right, how would it go? And it is not uncommon for me to go, it wasn't your best, but it wasn't your worst. Those will be the first words out of my mouth. I'm like, okay, what's next? It's not uncommon for me to go, there's 2 things I want to see do different, and that's what's going to take this. You're going to be A+ after that. So letting them know there's this future world that is the basis for the criticism I'm about to give. Because they are used to everybody giving them, it's so great, it's so great. And I've even been at events where some of the internal people were like to themselves, that was so good, there's nothing that would change. I got 10 things I think that exec should do different. But I'm not a fool. I'm not going to give them 10. I'm going to give them the 2 I think are the highest impact right now. I'm going to say it. And it's having the confidence in myself that I am not doing anything for my own ego. I'm not doing anything for money. I am doing it because I believe this exec will have a better shot of moving their audience to believing and behaving and feeling something different if they enact the techniques I give them. I believe they will win if they change these things about themselves. And because I can rest confidently in that, I don't shake anymore when I give that advice. 15 years ago, it was hard. Little lump in the throat, sweaty hands. I've been doing this a while now. And I rest easy knowing, why am I speaking up right now? Is it worth it right now? Can I actually make a difference, or are we too close to showtime? I do all that calculus before I open my mouth and deliver. Here's something I think needs to be different before I move forward.
Oh, I love that answer. I have that personality too. I'm very direct, and people tell me I'm very direct, and I would like that to be part of my brand. I think you really need to define your personal brand, and I think that's great. I think that's really great feedback. I have a question for you. This is something that I'm always wondering. What is charisma? And if you don't have it, do you not have it? I mean, there's certain people who have, like Tony Robbins. Like, I'm not a huge Tony Robbins fan, but obviously he has some kind of charisma. He has millions and millions of followers that just adore him. You know, Kennedy had charisma. Do you have it or you don't? Is it like, can you get it? What do you think?
I think you can get it. I do think you can get it. But much like public speaking, I think there are some personality traits that might just make it easier or more accessible to some people than others. So I'm not going to pretend that I wasn't the first one raising my hand in school, in elementary school, like pick me. I was. All right. So there's something about my personality which jives really well with this profession, with communication overall. I think it's the same when it comes to charisma. But what I think that personality trait might be is they so value the other people in the room with them that they feel like they're in one. To me, charisma comes down to, we're in this together. I can't look away. And what are things that you can't look at? What do you feel that moment like, oh my gosh, we're in this? Because I believe you speaker think nothing else is more important than whatever it is we're doing together. I think that is for me when I'm like, that person is charismatic. I don't think they notice the pings. I don't think they're distracted by what's next on their calendar. They just made me feel like I was the only person in the room.
Yeah,
that's charismatic. Right. Yeah, and you can teach some of that. You can teach how to sit in those moments, live in that pause, really ingest someone's question and sit with it and go, not, well, that's a great question, and jump on an answer. That's not charismatic. But someone gives you a question and you can coach a leader to go, all right, I think I got 2 ways I would answer that. Okay, that just changed, right?
It did.
The words would be the same. The answer is the same, but how I pulled it in and thought about that moment completely changes.
Yeah, it did. It really did change it. That's a really good tip. So charisma is a little bit about also your voice level, right? How you look at the audience, how you listen, how you just seem very interested in that person, like you said. So these things can be learned. That's so interesting. What is the difference between sharing? So we talked about vulnerability and oversharing. Have you ever had any execs that overshare, or is that very rare?
It's rare, but not very rare.
Okay.
Oversharing versus sharing. I would say it's oversharing when it's not yours to share.
Okay.
That is oversharing. That's not yours to share. How dare you? That was not your information. That was a private conversation. It's also oversharing when it makes the audience uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah.
Now that's tricky. That means you got to be listening to your audience. You've got to be watching for their cues. You got to be able to respond if their reaction is like, whoa, too much. You got to be able to stop the script you were going to say, pause and go,
Pivot.
I'm seeing a couple of faces right now that make me think I might have overstepped. So let me take a beat and let me back up. All right, you just controlled the whole moment right then because you were paying attention and you got the cues from people that you were oversharing. You can only do that if you are well prepared. You've got a package of techniques available to you and you're not scared about what might happen if I break script right now. You recognize I'm here in these moment with these people.
Well, like if you tell a bad joke and then your audience, you think maybe you rehearsed the joke and you thought it was funny and then the audience, nobody laughs. Oh my gosh. I guess you could just say, guess that was a bad joke.
There are plenty of ways to have commentary on the reaction the audience just had, and different leaders would be able to pull on that type of humor. Other leaders would be self-deprecation works for some people. It doesn't work for other people. That's the nuance that you get in a coaching relationship is someone saying, don't do that. That's not you're not funny. We're not writing you any jokes in the script. You've never landed funny. Now's not the time. That's not what we're going to lean into from your personality. We're going to lean into the wise sage. That's what we're going to lean into. We're going to lean into the entrepreneurial spirit. We can lean into those things that are already part of who you are, that feel most authentic to you. I don't got to make you somebody else that you're not.
That's good. That's a really good point. Don't be something that you're not. Really be authentic. Stick to what you're good at. If you're not good at telling jokes, don't tell a joke. If you're good at being authentic and vulnerable, tell something about your day that your kid did on your way to work or something like that, that was heartfelt, stick to what you know. I like that. But some of these executives are talking to people in like a crowd of 5 to 20,000 people. What are some tips? Let's say you're new at doing this. You've just been promoted and you're now going from like 1,000 people to 20,000 people or it's your first public speaking gig when you've got so many people in front of you. How do you coach people not to be nervous? I'm sure I have not spoken in front of, I've asked questions in front of, 20,000 people at a conference, but I haven't spoken in front of 20,000 people. I'm just wondering, like, what are the things you can tell them to kind of calm down?
I had a professor who once said, I'm not worried about the people who say I get nervous. I'm worried about the people who say I don't. Because when you get nervous, it means you care. It means the stakes are high. There are things that you're like, I don't get nervous about opening the fridge. I'm not scared. I get nervous about making the meal for my family on the holidays because I want it to go so well because the stakes are high for me. So you're nervous because it matters. This is going to help us get a favorable review from analysts. If I land this the right way, this is going to mean I can keep my employees if this lands this the right way. We could pay bonuses this year if this lands the right way. It's on the line. So good. Lean into why you're nervous because it matters. Okay, cool. Great. It matters to you. Well, that's actually half the battle is getting me to convince leaders that what they say matters because they're like, nobody cares. This doesn't matter. No, it definitely matters. It matters. And that's why you're nervous. And I think that helps center people. When I tell them, I'd be scared if you weren't nervous. Those are the executives who are unlikable on stage. The ones who are like, I don't ever get nervous. I'm like, oh, cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
It's not going to go well. It's just not going to go well. The people can feel that I'm in no way nervous. I don't care type of energy. So leaning into the nerves works. The other thing is something I do backstage with executives right before they take the stage. They're back there. If it's a big event, the lights are shining, the music is blaring. Most of their team is out front watching now. It's just me and the exec with the crew in the back. And they're kind of pacing, thinking, and I always tap them on the shoulder and I go, hey, just one more thing. Remember that you like your job. And I get a chuckle and I get a laugh and they're like, I do like my job. Yeah, you like it. Go out there. Have fun. Yeah. Have a good time. And it helps them recenter because they've put so much pressure on themselves in those moments. And if you just recenter, hey, I like what I'm doing. I care about what I'm doing. That's going to go well. That's me assuming you did practice for the weeks leading up to the event. You had your hand in the content creation. You've clicked through your sides. You've done your mic check. If all of that's going well, what is really the worst that could happen on that stage? For real. What's the worst that could happen?
Right. That's true. That's good. That's great advice. What kind of storytelling is effective? I mean, stories are so compelling, but not all stories can be interesting. How do you make storytelling interesting when you are public speaking?
It's all about what the audience needs to hear to move them to thinking and believing, behaving something different. I think that's where people fall flat with story. I got to add a story so this is interesting.
Right.
Stop. Why is your audience here? What do you want them to think or feel or do differently after you're done speaking? Great.
Those are the questions.
That's it. What do you want your audience to think, feel, and do? That's it. That's what this whole game is about. And if
Yeah.
you say, well, I don't really want them to think, feel, or do anything differently, cancel the event.
Right.
Don't send the email. Cancel the meeting. If you aren't moving people, you're wasting time. You're filling space. You're living up to this busy culture that we have. Knock it off.
Right.
Now you're like, okay, I know what I want them to think, feel, or do. Do you have a story where you were able to have a lesson that moved someone to think, feel, or do in a similar way? Maybe a different team that you worked on, or a different event that you were at before, or another crisis that you have, or something from your personal life. If you mapped those, 90% of the time you're going to crush it, no matter what story you pick, as long as the story has the same lesson that moved that group of people the way you're trying to move the current group of people you're talking to.
There is a way to tell a story that just really captivates people. And some people are just so good at it and some people aren't. So I guess just focus on what you're good at. If you're not good at telling the stories, skip it, like you said.
But it's also a skill that you can develop. You can become a better storyteller by learning to what my audience needs. If you are always thinking about your audience, you're more than halfway there, honestly. If you just know what do they need. This morning, as I was preparing for our conversation, all right, what might her listeners need? What are tips I could give them, whether they are exec comms and working with other people or they're their own speakers? Okay, just make sure you keep giving them nuggets of things that they can do differently. No one's listening being like, gee whiz, I sure hope this episode falls flat and there's no tips in it.
Right, exactly.
Everyone wants it to be successful. And so that's why you use stories to increase the chance that they remember what you want them to remember, that they do what you want them to do, because stories stick with us.
Okay, so speaking of remembering, is it 3 points that are best? What do people remember, 3 or 2, or what do you recommend?
I would say that the conventional wisdom is 3 still, because if you look into nature, things happen in 3s in nature. So now we've got these natural biological reasons to believe 3 is really good. We know that primacy and recency works. We know people remember the first thing you heard and the last thing you heard. We know this to be true.
Okay.
But I would say above all of that, people remember what they had an emotional reaction to. So I don't care if it's 1 or 7.
Okay.
If you got 7 emotional reactions from people, I bet you they remember those things. And they might not remember all the nuances. They might not remember all the details. But an often quoted line from Maya Angelou is they'll always remember how you made them feel.
Right, that's
They'll
true.
always remember how you made them feel. And stories have the power to do that in a business presentation, to make me feel like this change is going to set us on the right direction, to make me feel scared if we don't do something different than what we're doing today, then we're going to fail and we'll never move forward. That gives me the type of emotional memory I need so that when I close my computer or go on to my next meeting that's on my schedule, it's lingering, or it comes back later, or something else cues me to remember it. And now I'm going to be able to move forward and take action on it.
What if you can't memorize your script and you read it?
Well, good news. I almost want no one to memorize. I usually coach execs don't memorize.
Okay. Oh, interesting.
I want you to internalize. And I'm going to be a stickler on the difference between memorize and internalize. Because memorize is wrote word for word. Internalize is, can I get the gist of this with the ebbs and flows and the contrast that I wanted to land? Then you're just fine. Great.
Okay.
Internalize it. And so the easiest way I have found to internalize is to get people to practice their talks in chunks. I never let anybody practice the thing start to finish until we get to dress rehearsal.
Okay.
So every time they get there, they're like, okay, let's run through it. And I was like, we're not. We're going to run the intro 3 times today. That's all we're going to do.
In chunks.
And when we meet in 2 days, you're going to run the first main point 3 times with me. That's it. We're not going to do the intro. The intro's done. We did that 2 days ago. We're only doing main point 1 today. And that's such a more manageable rehearsal schedule than I've got to find the 17 minutes to run my talk, start to finish. Oh my God, I'm never going to find it. I just won't practice. Can you find the 2.5 minutes to say your intro in the shower today? I think you can. I think you can.
Yeah, I know. That's good. That's good. It's good to internalize it in chunks.
Makes it so much easier. Now, if you get to, I have to read it. Like, political addresses are often read, and there are some really great orators in our presidential history in the U.S. who read just fine. And I was not mad at them for reading. But I will say, like, teleprompter reading is a skill. I have to coach executives on how to read through a prompter or coach them to read a speaker note in a virtual meeting. That's something that you have to practice. It does not just come natural to anybody. No one's just good at that. So you have to start to learn how to pace yourself, how to ad lib if the prompter got off too far, when you shouldn't get off the script, because the words we've created are so magically perfect exactly the way they are. They can't be said in a different way. That is something that you can coach your way through.
Okay, interesting. So sometimes reading is actually beneficial. And then, if you're reading a prompter and the words are, like you said, perfectly designed for you. And is that important? I've heard a lot about voice inflection is very important. When you can go back, when you can move forward, when you can show inflection, it tells the story as well. Do you agree?
Well, contrast is the name of the game, both in your content. You need highs and lows and the tension and release, and then also in your delivery. So it's something you can train speakers to do, is to you're almost always meta-analyzing the words that are coming out of your mouth, the way that they're coming out of your mouth, but while still trying to be present with the people and then be like, what do I think they need right now? They probably need a breath just as much as I do.
Right.
And now I drop the tone, I drop the rate, I move back my body, and we all have a moment to breathe. And then we can get back in, and we got this nice flow moving back. But as someone who is habitually a fast talker, I grew up wanting to be the Micro Machines man and Busta Rhymes. I used to practice to see how fast I could get. I had to spend many hours of dozens of them working specifically on my rate. I'm fast, so I over-articulate a lot. My mouth hurts at the end because it's a technique that can slow you down. Mm-hmm. So all of that is what can come together to add those highs and lows. I remind myself, take a beat for them as much as you need it for you. Find ways to pull them in. And every speaker is a little different. Some are high energy and they need the lows. Some are low energy and they need the highs.
Okay.
And so that's the part that's a little manufactured about public speaking.
Right.
It's a little performative, and it is. I'm not going to pretend that it's not a little bit performative, because the genesis of public speaking takes us back to Greece. It takes us back to Aristotle, and takes us back to standing up in the middle of forums for reason and ceremony. So let's acknowledge it and own it, and then make it work the best for us in a business setting.
So what about PowerPoint, and just how are things evolving? Are there any changes? Are there any new trends in public speaking? Any companies that you know of that are doing things differently?
I would say the biggest trend is about how attention spans have dropped. So keynotes need to get shorter.
Okay, how short?
One of the data points I like for this is go back and look at how long TED Talks were 15 years ago, 10 years ago, and look how long they are now.
Interesting.
Total. It used to be standard, right? A 20-minute TED Talk.
And now?
12. 13, 14. Yeah. Nobody, who wants to listen to this thing for 20 minutes? I ain't got 20 minutes to listen to nothing. So I want to listen to something that's 12 or 15 minutes. And in reality, any length talk you had, you should be able to do the elevator pitch version and the little bit longer version and the really long version. And so because of that, you can see at the event level, a lot more breaks up in the flow. Like we want a leader to talk and then another leader comes on and then there's a fireside chat. Now we've got this video and now we're going to have this moment over here, because you have to re-earn their attention with all of those little moves and all those little changes.
Okay.
There are some trends of increased fireside chats to stand and deliver keynotes. Executives love a fireside chat. Oh, executives are like, can't you just ask me some questions and I'll just answer them?
It's much easier.
Seems so much easier unless I'm your coach and I make you practice your fireside chat answers with me. And then they're like, I got to get a story into every one of these answers. You do. So now you and I are going to sit down and figure out how we get the elements of story. Maybe it's not a capital S story, but we're still going to use the structure of story. So now you don't have to do it one time for 12 minutes. I need you to do it 7 times for each one of these questions that you're getting on stage. And I need you to look actually interested in the other panelists who are talking.
Yeah. Yeah,
Panel,
that does help.
A lot of panel prep I do with people. Otherwise, you just gave 4 individual keynotes and it was boring.
Right.
The whole point of a panel is
interaction.
The interaction. I'm going to get something magical because you 4 humans came together at this moment in time. And if I didn't, you faked a panel interaction for me because you didn't want to have 4 keynotes. Boo.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, okay, so someone like me, I'm not the person who's presenting to 20,000 people, but I am having meetings and I am presenting every day in my job. So someone like me or who's listening, what are some tips that I can do this week?
I'd say
that can help me.
Number 1 is every time you look at a calendar and you're like, I'm in that next meeting. What's my goal for this meeting? What am I trying to get them to do? And not like your own personal goal, but by the time that I leave, how will these people be different? How will they be believing, feeling, or behaving something different? You're like, none, not at all. Double check if you need to be on the agenda for that meeting.
Okay.
Double check. Maybe you don't need to be. Maybe you don't need to be there anymore. I would say the chance that you have something recorded from yesterday that lives somewhere exists. Go watch it.
Okay.
Go watch it and watch it as if you were your best friend watching it. Your best friend probably doesn't talk to you the way you talk to you.
Right.
Your best friend is probably more caring and more kind and more loving. So let that version of you watch you and ask yourself, okay, best friend me, what could be different? What could be better to achieve the goal of convincing people to do something that I want them to do? It's all about the influence. So not just picking apart things about yourself for no good reason because it feels good to make ourselves feel bad, but because, if I did those things differently, I would have a stronger likelihood of achieving my goal of getting the rest of these people to agree to my recommendations, to say yes to the requests that I'm making, to agree with my side so that we can move something forward. Those are 2 easy changes.
I like that.
So simple that you don't even have to get out of your seat to do these things. I'm not asking you to go stand up and give a talk somewhere. Awareness is always number 1. So you just have to start having more awareness. What were my goals for this next meeting or this next interaction? Let me watch something and become more aware of how I'm showing up. And I think the third would be if you had a confidant at work who's in a lot of meetings with you, that you could say, hey, I'm trying to work on, be as specific as you can. I'm trying to work on not talking so fast in meetings. I'm trying to work on not interrupting people. I'm trying to limit the number of times I speak up in a meeting. I'm trying to speak up 3 more times.
I just interrupted you. I interrupt people. Okay, that's what I need to learn how to do.
I'm an interrupter too, and I give myself some comfort because as the writer of adaptive listening, I know people have 4 listening styles, and mine is an advanced listener. I am always trying to move us forward because I feel that I've done something wrong if I haven't moved us forward. And so when I know that you and I are on the same wavelength, I interrupt you to say, you don't have to keep going. I'm already with you. Let's keep going forward. And that's not rude. That's not rude when you're in a collaborative working session and you're in sync with somebody and you're both like, let's get to the end as fast as we can get to the end. That's not rude behavior. So I am not saying you should always interrupt people. I'm just saying there are some work situations where that's an advantage to do that.
Yeah, it's like almost for me personally, my brain is going so fast and someone's saying something and I'm like, I was just doing it today with my boss and I was saying, oh, no, this isn't needed. And I interrupted her, which I should have. I was like, why did you interrupt her? Just let her finish her thought and then you can say what you want to say. But it's like I'm a little kid raising my hand, in the front of the class and pick me. And I just want to interrupt them. That's something I really have to work at. So
sometimes, or maybe your leader is the type of person or that situation, they are grateful that you didn't waste time having them go down a rabbit hole that you're like, that's solved. We don't have to do it.
Right.
So if they are, you did a good thing.
Right.
That's right.
True.
You did a good thing. It's all based on what the person needs in that moment.
But I think that's a good tip is to listen to yourself, play back. I mean, now we have Otter AI. There's so many things that we could tape ourselves. We have Zoom. Listen to yourself. If you're an interrupter or if you're too slow or you're too fast, figure it out and make some changes. So
absolutely.
I like that. Maegan, this has been you are so amazing.
Oh, you're sweet.
Yeah, you gave our listeners so many tips. They're just going to love this episode. I know it. So tell us about your book before what we can learn from your book.
Yeah. So my book, my co-author Nicole and I wrote this book after 3 years of research, figuring out, people are certainly not listening at work, but there are some people who get it right. So we went on a big, huge listening tour trying to find out who are the listeners at work who are getting it right. What are they doing? Can we codify what they're doing? And can we then teach other people to listen the same way? And that's when we found out every time someone speaks to you at work, they have a goal. They have something they want to achieve. And the good news is it's only one of 4 things. They either want you to support them with emotional validation, or they want you to immerse so you understand and remember what they said, or they want you to advance and help them move people, process, projects forward, or they want you to discern and find red flags and poke holes and help them think through the intricacies of something. That's it. Every time they speak to you. Mm-hmm. And it turns out every one of us is one of 4 as a default. We either support by instinct or advance by instinct or immerse by instinct or discern by instinct. And you know how you can remember it? It forms the word said, because you're always listening to what is said or what's not said. So the book goes into helping you know what your own listening style is, and then helping you figure out what does someone need from the interaction so I can stop listening the way I'm used to listening and listen the way they might need. That's why I know sometimes it's good to interrupt people because they want you to move them forward.
Got it. Okay. I like that. So how do people buy your book?
Amazon, adaptive listening. You've probably heard of active listening. Active listening was made in the 50s by psychologists. It was good for that. It's not great for business. So we are changing the game. No more active listening. It's time for adaptive listening. You can find it on Amazon.
Okay. And how do people get a hold of you if they want coaching?
Connect with me on LinkedIn, but mention that you heard me on this podcast because I don't go saying yes to everybody. Yeah. I don't know if it's a bot or fake. So tell me that you heard on this podcast, connect with me on LinkedIn, but also go to Duarte.com. We have so many services for both individual speakers, but also teams. That's how people find me, is that they're a head of comms or a head of events, and they know that their executives or their internal teams want to up-level their communication skills. So come over to the website, fill out a form, and we will have someone contact you.
I do have to say that Duarte is the gold standard. You guys are the gold standard. And I have taken classes, online classes, that my company's paid for, like PowerPoint classes that have been great. So if you can't afford to do the whole thing, there are other ways you can get a little piece of Duarte for a lower price. So
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thanks. This has been wonderful. Thanks for listening to Talk with Tara. If you love today's episode, please follow the show and share it with a friend. Stay tuned. There's so much more to talk about. See you next time.